We cannot talk about branding without mentioning mood boards. It's one of the very first steps in the creation of a new brand identity, and it's basically a selection of photos, colors, typography, textures, any kind of visual reference that's going to serve as a guide for the look and feel of our future brand identity. It's actually a very fun and creative process since in this phase we don't have to get caught up, about commercial use of the images. We can just gather inspiration from as many places as possible, other creators, other brands, and my favorite, Pinterest. It's actually a very fun and creative process since during this phase we basically just gather information and inspiration from different sources like social media, Behance, Dribble, and my favorite, Pinterest. And once we have a mood board with all those elements that I mentioned, then we can start designing. So I'm gonna share a little bit of my process as a brand designer when I work with clients, but also give you some tips if you want to create your own mood board and you're designing your own brand yourself, or if you're a new designer and you don't know how to navigate this phase with new clients. So for me, this phase is actually like phase two of the process, I would say. Like it comes after everything, like the client signed the contract, made a deposit, we had our first briefing meeting, which is actually like a briefing and strategy meeting that we do basically just to understand a little bit more about the business, their goals, and to understand their target audience, competitors, that kind of stuff. It's a meeting that usually lasts about an hour and a half, and it gives me enough information to start my research and strategize to bring the best results to my clients. And it gives me a pretty good vision, like in my head, of what this brand could potentially look like. The mood board is sent to the client a couple of days after we have that meeting, and they have to approve it before we start designing. The key here is to look for elements that align with the brand's personality, the brand's values and tone of voice. For example, if your client's brand is highly focused on sustainability, you will want to include images of nature and eco-friendly packaging. But I don't just send them a bunch of images and tell them like, this is it. I actually sent a PDF document explaining why we chose those images, mention some of the fonts and colors that appear there, how we could potentially use some of those colors, and what message we want to convey, and we asked them if they feel the same about their brand. It's really rare that a client is gonna say that the mood board has nothing to do with their brand, with what they had in mind, because we already had that 1 hour long session. We already did some research, we understood their competitors, and every image has a reason to be there. It's not just about the visuals, it's about strategy. And it's not only the client that benefits from having this visual direction, like this creative direction for the brand. If you're working with a team, with other freelancers, it's a really great tool to have so everybody's on the same page about the brand identity. So enough of me talking. I want to put together a mood board for you to see how I do it, my process, and be able to replicate it for yourself, for your brand, or for future clients. Also, I'm gonna leave a link in the description below to a freebie. It's a Canva template, mood board template, so you can create your own mood board. So now we're going to generate a brief. So this is going to be like a concept project. It's not an existing brand. And I'm going to create my mood board in Figma just because, I am so much more comfortable with Figma. I think I have mentioned it a few times here on the channel. That's where I like to do everything not before, except for brand identities, like the actual brand identity we design on Illustrator, but everything else, Figma is where it's at. And I'm gonna try to keep this mood board around 12, maybe 15 images. I don't recommend adding less than 10 images. I think it's really hard to convey a message with less than that. So I think 12, 15 is a great number. Okay, so we are going to use Good Brief to generate our design brief. And I chose here brand identity, and industry is going to be food. So let's see what it's going to give us. Healthy pastries, that's already like really interesting to work with. 5-star restaurants. So we have here like some keywords that we can also use during our search. Like for example, when you type on Pinterest, I don't know, instead of just typing pastries, we're gonna go for healthy pastries, or like, I don't know, fancy pastries, some keywords like that. Okay, we're not gonna use these ones here. Let's just copy this company description. And I have here, I have two mood boards here on Figma. So I think we're gonna use this one first. I just really want to paste this little description here so we don't have to go back to good brief all the time. Okay, so I have here also a few websites. Let me close this one. Websites that I like to use during this research. So Pinterest, Behance, and Dribble. Dribble, I feel like it's more towards like web design, UI design, that kind of stuff. But sometimes you find some interesting like packaging images here. So we're gonna like keep it there maybe as a last resource. We're gonna start here with some images like photos, product photos. So healthy pastry. You see, and like we're also going for something that's a bit like luxurious. So I definitely feel like this is like high ticket pastry. Choose maybe two or three for the mood board. I really like this one. And also, like, important to note that here we are not doing that, but usually before this step, we will go and research the competitors just to understand what they're doing and how we can stand out. But this is like a very simple process. So, just something to keep in mind. I'm also gonna paste like in a different mood board, like just to see what looks best. I don't usually work with this format, but I just found it nice. So, and this can also serve as a guide for future, photography. So, because photography is a very important part of brand identity, especially when it's like a physical business or an e-commerce store. And we also like, at least me, I try not to keep like similar images close one to the other in the mood board. Like for example, here I'm probably gonna go with something cleaner or like typography, something like that, just to give it some balance. Okay, we can like include maybe some of this. I like that because it's like it's catered towards women. So that's also something to keep in mind. We can make it a little bit more delicate. Love this so much, and I also love the fonts here. Let's keep it like this. We can always go back, and change the mood board, but I just feel like there are too many photos here and not enough like fonts, textures, packaging, like for example pastry box. You see like something like this for us to have as reference. I usually tend to relate luxurious, like 5-star brand to something a little bit more minimal. And not that that's a rule, but I just feel like that's what's expected. And as you can see, all these boxes, they are pretty minimal. It's just the sticker, maybe. I like this. Oh, yeah, this is like such a beautiful combination. Love this. I like this a lot. So we're also gonna add this one, maybe. We definitely have to think about packaging here. This one has fonts here as well that we can use as inspiration because I feel like they could go well with this brand. So we're also gonna add this one. Also, the cool thing about mood boards is that we can gather inspiration from different industries, brands that have nothing to do with the brand that we are designing. So for example, here, like, I just want some texture. I don't care like which industry they belong to. So I feel like this is something that could go well maybe in their packaging or some other material. So I'm just gonna add it to the mood board maybe. And also you see that the colors are pretty similar to what we already have in the mood board. It starts to make a lot of sense. This could serve as inspiration for future ads, for example. So I think it's really valid to include this in the mood board. Maybe you know what's missing here? That just by looking at it, people. Like we have to think about how we want our audience to feel. So I think we have to include at least one image of people eating at this place, or picking up their pastries. You know, I mentioned like Pinterest, Behance, Dribble, but I forgot like Google Images is there, you know, and since during this phase we don't have to pay that much attention to commercial use because this is not going to be like a part of the brand. So I think it's completely fine to just search on Google for images. And yeah, we are finding here some nice images. So this is our mood board, and you know, I can definitely see a brand coming to life here because in the end we have very similar colors in some of the images, and that was not intentional at all. So, you know, we have this like beige appearing a few times. We have the like red slash orangey also appearing here. It's a very clean color palette. We have here some really nice, like beautiful fonts. So yeah, I think I would send this to this client. And then when I send this to the client, what I'm gonna do is here in Figma, I'm just going to like do something like that. And I know that my background is really dark, so you cannot see, but just like little arrows here and then a little bit of why we chose that specific image, like the font. And also, for example, sometimes there are things in the image that we don't necessarily want the client to pay attention to. For example, here maybe they could, you know, be too focused on the age of these girls. Maybe that's not, you know, the audience they're going for, but this is just like to illustrate the vibe, the energy of the brand. So I might add here as well a little like note, the audience is maybe more mature or something like that, but we still feel like this is the energy that, you know, something like that. I'm just like making up stuff here on the spot and it's really hard. But yeah, so this is what I would do, and I would save it as a PDF. I can do like that straight here in Figma. I just have to have everything under a frame, so a single frame, and I will save it as a PDF, send it to my client, and hope for a very positive feedback, which is usually what happens. I hope you liked this video. Mood boards are such a fun part of the branding process, and I had so much fun with this particular brief as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. This is in honor of tour starting this week. And if Taylor Swift doesn't remember she has an album called Evermore, I do, because it's my favorite.